because I didn't believe in God. I grew up going to church, but I didn't truly believe in God for myself until sometime in college. I was in my car. It was the middle of the day. It was the middle of the afternoon, and I was screaming out, "God, are you real, God?" I remember because I was fighting. Is God real? There's this void I have inside of me. There's something I'm missing. I feel so lost. I felt so lost. I felt crazy intent on that being my final performance. I was intent on ending it off. Hi, I'm Shari, and I'm a human who has gotten it wrong. And through my experiences, I've learned some things that I'd like to share with you. And I invite you to continue on your journey without disclaimers, without the shame of past choices, but also without denying the responsibility that we have to make better choices going forward. A few weeks ago, I posted a video called God, Not the Universe. And in it, I explored three of the things that help me remain grounded in my faith in God. And that video is really for people who are teetering on their faith. Maybe they've never been a believer and they're open now to exploring the idea of God, or they consider themselves believers and are now starting to question their faith. And that happens sometimes. Doubt happens sometimes, where we question the existence of God, or maybe we question something that we believe or have believed that God told us. So that video is really for those people who are in that position right now. And this video is an extension to that one, where I wanted to share two more things that help me to remain grounded in my faith in God. The two things being, number one, humility, and number two, my own experience. So let's talk about humility first. Humility. This idea that we don't know it all, that maybe there are some things we'll never understand, that we're not better than anybody else, that we're all human beings in this earth, doing our absolute best. And there are some people who believe that the earth and all the systems and processes and animals and human beings in it are nothing more than computer simulation, code. And I thought, isn't that interesting? That rather than humble ourselves to believe that maybe God is bigger and greater, that we have to reduce the creative and logical and imaginative ability of God to something that we can understand, which is code or computer simulation or a game. And I thought it was really interesting because, again, it speaks to pride, arrogance that we sometimes have in our attempt to understand things that we don't understand. We have to make it something that we can tangibly understand, and I get it. But that's the thing about faith, is you don't always have all the answers. So the second thing I want to talk about is my own experience. And this is probably the most powerful thing that I can share that keeps me grounded in my faith in God. To your own experience with God and your willingness to be open to experiencing God, that will be the most powerful thing that will keep you grounded in your faith in God, or allow you to experience God if you've never experienced Him before, or you've never realized that you experienced Him before. So I'm going to share a little snippet of my story. Because I didn't believe in God. I grew up going to church, but I didn't truly believe in God for myself until sometime in college. When I was a senior in high school, that's when my deep, dark mental state really, really started to go towards a downward path. And between then and my first 2 years of college, I was intent on hightailing it out of this earth. And my freshman year of college, I had a class that caused me to have to wake up when it was still dark outside. And I don't know why I did that, other than I really enjoy getting up early, especially back then. And I had a freshman roommate in college who, she happened to wake up at that time when I was getting ready, and it was still dark outside. So I didn't really see her. I maybe saw, there's light underneath the door, so I could maybe see a little bit in the room, but I didn't like to turn the lights on while my roommate was still sleeping, so I'd get ready in the dark. But she woke up while it was still dark outside, and tears in her eyes, or I imagine there was tears in her eyes. She was audibly, I could hear her audibly crying. She said, "God loves you. He just wants me to let you know that he loves you." And I was in shock and awe. I was so, I can't say that I felt good. I was a little, it was an overwhelming feeling. It didn't move me. It didn't make me say, "Oh my gosh, God is real" in that moment, but it did start to make me question it about God. Because what a strange moment that was. She didn't typically wake up at that time. So for her to be crying and saying this to me, I thought was pretty powerful. And like I said, it didn't move me at the time, but I remember it 10 years later, that one moment. And so it obviously stayed with me. And then fast forward to my sophomore year of college, when I wanted to be in a pageant. And what I didn't tell people at the time, and I actually pursued being in that pageant. We did rehearsals, so on and so forth. And what I didn't tell people at the time was that after the pageant, I was intent on that being my final performance. I was intent on ending it off for myself. And a few weeks or a few days, can't remember exactly when, before that pageant was supposed to take place, it was canceled. It was announced to the contestants that the pageant was canceled. And I felt at my lowest of low moments at that time after hearing that the pageant was canceled. Because that I wanted to do that performance because I really enjoyed performing. I enjoyed being on stage. And I thought, wow, I couldn't even get that done before, I wanted to end it all. So I decided that night that was going to be the night I was going to do it. And in my readied state, in my heightened state, as I'm starting to think, okay, how do I want to go about doing this now? Because I wasn't ready to do it. The pageant hadn't happened yet, so I didn't have all my plans in place. So I had to figure out, okay, I had an idea, but I hadn't mentally prepared for the moment just yet. And so I was thinking, do I want to do it this way? Do I want to find another avenue? In that moment, I felt what could only be described as an overwhelming sense of peace that washed over me. And I knew in that moment that it was God. I didn't believe in God yet. I didn't put my trust and my faith in God. I remember maybe a few weeks earlier, I was in my car. It was the middle of the day. It was the middle of the afternoon, and I was screaming out, "God, are you real, God?" I remember because I was fighting. Is God real? There's this void I have inside of me. There's something I'm missing. I feel so lost. I felt so lost. I felt crazy. I felt out of control. And so I remember having screamed out to God weeks prior to that moment. And in that moment, I believe God, my heart was so open and so broken that I knew that God was able to come in. My heart was not hard any longer. It had been softened. And I allowed God to enter in that moment. My heart was so open and ready to came, who found me, who pursued me. And that's what that overwhelming peace was that entered into my heart in that moment. And I sat down. I was in an apartment at the time. At that time, 3 other women. I was in my room, and I sat down, and I didn't do it. I felt so overwhelmed. Like I wasn't fixed in any way. I just felt so at peace. And it wasn't until a couple weeks later, that I was coming out of an event, and I saw a friend of mine. And she asked me, "Do you want to receive salvation? Do you want to say a prayer of salvation?" And I said, "What is that?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I didn't know what it was, but she walked to the prayer, and I was crying, not because I felt anything, because I felt silly, honestly. Felt embarrassed, like, what am I doing here? But something in me knew that I needed to pray that prayer. And then a few days after that, I started crying again. I think I was in my car, or maybe I was outside of store. I can't remember exactly where I was, but I just remember crying. And this time it wasn't because I was embarrassed. This time it was because I accepted God. I accepted God and entered into my heart. And the friend that led me through that prayer of salvation, along with another group of friends who had already accepted Christ, I want to say maybe months before I did, they were already going to a church. And I decided from that day forward, I was going to church. I was going to church and I was going to follow God. And I have not left God since. And that was over 10 years ago. I think I said that. It was over 10 years ago that these events took place. God has done things in my life and opened up my heart and made me realize since then. I have more stories of my own experience with God since that moment, but that was the most powerful moment for me so far because it was my first encounter, my first few encounters with God. And so whenever I start to doubt, is God real? Whenever I start to doubt, does God love me? I think back on those moments. And let me tell you right now, a moment like that is going to be the most powerful moment you will ever have. But your heart cannot be hard. Your heart, you need to be in a humble state, a state that is seeking out truth, a state that is seeking out love, true love, not the love that our society has deemed love to be. True, honest, authentic love. God is love. When you are in that ready state, when your heart is in that state of wanting to know what love is, what true love is, what God is, who God is, God is not going to thrust himself upon you. God will enter in. God will speak to you and talk to you. And you will hear him rather. He's always talking. But you will hear him. You'll be able to hear him when your heart is open and humble. So again, two things in this video that keep me grounded in my faith in God. Number one, humility. And number two, my own experience with God. You know, we're taught in school growing up, we're taught to follow our senses and follow logic. Our sense of hearing, our sense of taste, our sense of touch, our sense of smell, our sense of sight. We're taught to group objects by color and group things by shape. We're really taught how to be human. What we're not taught, what we lose as we go through school and education, is we lose understanding how to be humble. We lose character. We lose that spiritual sense that we have as babies. We knew God before he knitted us in our mother's womb. We knew God before we came out into this world. Somewhere along the way, we can lose sight of who God is. And we have to rediscover. And we have to soften our hearts. We have to humble ourselves so that God can help soften our hearts, so that we can experience God for ourselves. And I plead with you, humble yourself. Remind yourself that you don't know it all, and that these human beings who speak God out of you or away from you don't know it all either. You have to experience God for yourself. If you humble yourself, experience God for yourself. And I truly believe that you will experience something that you have never experienced in your life. And it is life-changing. Humility and experience.